It hasn't even been a week yet since we got the R1 development announcement, and details are beginning to leak out. In this video, we have 4 leaked images of the Canon EOS R1 at the Monaco Grand Prix, and this is all thanks to Federico Basili. And the images provided are very revealing. These aren't some low-resolution images. These are pretty detailed. We've got new buttons, a new registration number, and some new switches. First up to the top of the camera, we can see a little button on top of the hot shoe, and that appears to be a locking mechanism so we don't lose it after a week. That's a nice touch. The ergonomics do look good, definite improvements in refinement from the 1DX Mark III and even the Canon EOS R3. We can see a bar to fasten the strap to the underside of the camera, something that will prove very handy if you're constantly switching from portrait to landscape or landscape to portrait. And if you're already checking images about the Canon EOS R3, yep, you're not going to find it there. This is new to the Canon EOS R1. Going back to the top, we can see a dedicated white balance button. This is definitely a nod to video shooters. And taking a look at the battery door locking mechanism, it looks like we got an upgrade there as well. Now let's turn our attention to the bottom of the camera where we have that sticker. And this might seem boring to many, but we have some revelations here. The first is we've got a full-size HDMI. And I know this is the Canon EOS R1, but it does give us hope that if the R1 gets a full-size HDMI, well, there's hope for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. I know it's hope because they're different cameras and different sized bodies. But even on the Canon EOS R5, the Mark I, the one I'm shooting with right now, if you take a look at where that HDMI is, at least on the shell of the camera, there's plenty of room that they could have easily put at the very least a mini, not a micro. Anyhow, let's get back to the photos. Did you catch that registration code? It's a little fuzzy, but it's DS126925. If you'll recall, we have 5 camera registrations. 3 of them digital stills and 2 of them cinema cameras. The digital stills are 126922, 126928, and 126904. No, 126925. So maybe we have some investigative sleuths out there that might be able to look into this and let me know more information about this registration number, because no one has reported this. And the 2 cinema cameras, well, they start with ID 0174 and ID 0179. I told you that this sticker wasn't boring. Interesting, right? And taking just one more look at the bottom of the camera, we can see that only 30 units were made before this one. But taking a look at all these images here, one thing that came to mind is that the Canon EOS R1 looks to have gone on some sort of weight loss program, that it's bulked up in some ways, in much the same way that an actor does before getting ready for one of those Marvel action films. Let's have another look. I mean, it looks smaller than the Canon EOS R3, and thicker, yes. And you know what this kind of looks like? It kind of reminds me of the Canon EOS R5C with all the vents covered up. Come to think of it, it doesn't look that big at all, does it? Could it be? Could it be? Am I just thinking crazy and nuts here? Am I just completely out of my mind? Could this be the Canon EOS R5 Mark II instead of the Canon EOS R1? Yeah, I know, Mark, I'm playing with them. Look, it's obviously got that integrated battery grip, and that's not something we see in the Canon EOS R5. Although Canon did stop making the battery grip for the Canon EOS R5, didn't they? No, this couldn't be the R5, or could it? No, no. I think this is obviously clearly the Canon EOS R1, but you see, the way this camera looks, the way it's been designed, it doesn't look as huge as the 1DX Mark III, and it definitely looks a little bit smaller than the R3. Although the thickness of the camera, it's definitely thicker than the R5. But it was just, when I saw this at around 3 o'clock in the morning, it was just one of those things that came into my mind, and I just thought, you know, this is nuts. But I'm curious to see what you think. I'm curious to hear, or curious to read what you think in the comment section when you tell me your first impressions of this camera, how it looks to you. The extra buttons, the extra bar for the strap. Interesting. See, this is what happens when you leak images that aren't blurred, that aren't low resolution. The resolution of these images is pretty good. I mean, to the point where we can actually make out the registration number. Now, they do make us squint and squirm a little bit with our eyes. Eyes don't squirm, do they? I know, Mark, it's early. I'm tired. I'm sorry. Squint is what I meant to say. It's pretty good, the detail here. I'm pretty impressed with this. Although, you know, one thing they're missing out, the one thing they're not showing us, is that Sony a7R5-like 4-axis LCD. Now, I'm not saying this camera has it, but for whatever reason, this person purposely left out a back view. I mean, we've got detailed images of the top, with the exception of one side of the top, like right here. Now, on the Canon EOS R6 Mark II, we can see that Canon changed out that button from that's easier to access, right? Remember that button? Well, they're not showing us that here. It's almost as though this was leaked on purpose with the blessing of Canon to get us all worked up a little bit here, but leave something to the imagination for another article post, for another forum post, for another video post. And not showing us the back of the camera where the LCD previously had been fixed. Now, the R3 changed that, but to give us some sort of 4-axis LCD on this camera, well, that would change things. Or maybe it's just a flippy screen, which would be a departure from 1 series cameras in the past. I do like these images, but they do beg a few more questions. The fun has started. It really has. We got the development announcement last week, and, well, I guess it was this week. I'm losing track of time. Getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning to produce these videos, you start to have one day blend into another. But we can see this camera. This is a new camera. This isn't the Canon EOS R3. And if it's not the R1, which I highly doubt it isn't, that would be a bit of a bombshell as well. What do you think? Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. I did some other checking, though. I want to let you know that checking B&H and Adorama in the United States, I didn't find any sales on the Canon 1DX Mark III, which is still surprising now that we have the development announcement for the Canon EOS R1. Although maybe it's because they only have a certain limited inventory and they're just keeping those cameras there for people who need them because they want to stick with DSLRs for all the sports shooters, for all the professionals out there. But the Canon EOS R3, well, Canon has discounted that faster than a grocery store the day after Halloween with all the Halloween candy. $54.99 would still be $500 off its release price, but $44.99, that's $1,500 off its release price. Some pretty impressive sales there. Now, when it comes to Sony, their Alpha 1, $64.99 or $6,500, and it doesn't include a battery grip at that price. Add another $300 for the battery grip. It isn't on sale. It hasn't been discounted either. So we're seeing some interesting things in the marketplace, but we do know now that we have a development announcement for the Canon EOS R1. These pictures obviously look like they're for the Canon EOS R1. I don't believe they're for the Canon EOS R5 in any way whatsoever, but maybe we just started some sort of conspiracy theory that these are indeed the R5. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And for anybody interested in purchasing camera bodies, lenses, and accessories, the few that I talked about in this video, then please consider using my affiliate links for B&H, Adorama, and Amazon.com in the description down below. I didn't talk a lot about sales, but there's still a huge amount of sales on right now. The Canon EOS R5, $28.99, Z8, $500 off. There's sales across the entire board. Even Sony has some sales on right now. And if you're interested in picking those up, I've got a whole bunch of them linked in the description down below. There is one thing I need to tell you, though. I do get, if you click on these links, I could make anywhere from 3 to 12% back, which goes right back to supporting this channel. You don't have to enter in any codes. You don't go to some strange part of these websites where you have to go through a whole bunch of clicks. It takes you right to the product page. And if there's anything else you purchase while you're on the site, as long as you don't leave the session, I will get credit for that as well. And a big thanks to all of you that have used my affiliate links in the past. It's one of the things that helps this channel grow. So thank you. And if you want to stay up to date on all the latest and the greatest, as you can see from this video here, I'm up early in the morning producing content 24/7. Sometimes I don't know how I do it. So go ahead and subscribe and choose all notifications if you want to stay up to date. But I also tweet out stuff on X because, well, sometimes there's stories that aren't quite big enough to have their own separate video, and I like that flexibility of X. And sometimes I just tweet out pricing information as well. Anyhow, thank you so much for tuning in. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.